we've put back into the workforce. That's a record the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. And he wants to close down he will shut it down again. He will destroy this country. You know, a lot of people, between drugs and alcohol and depression, when you start shutting it down, you take a look at what's happening in some of your Democrat-run states where they have these tough shutdowns. And I'm telling you, it's because they don't want to open it. One of them came out last week. You saw that. Oh, we're going to open up on November 9th. Why November 9th?
哎，今天这个妄议热线实在是太好玩了。
By keeping them closed, they're hurting people.
辩论啊
！People know what to do. They can social distance. They can wash the hands. They can wear masks.
刚才讨论了一个那个疫情的事，现在讨论经济话题。
North Carolina, when you look, and these governors are under siege. Pennsylvania.
哎，我觉得这个怎么说呢？光看这种那个辩论形式啊，很有意思，很有趣。我们这个非民主国家的啊，应该多学学这种辩论的气氛和形式。
And he'll close down the whole country. This guy will close down the whole country and destroy our country. Our country is coming back incredibly well, setting records as it does it. We don't need somebody to come in and say, let's shut it down.
All right. Your 2 minutes, sir. We're now moved to you. As I said, posing the question, the president says it's a V-shaped recovery. You say it's a K-shaped recovery.
无聊透顶的辩论赛，别说无聊透顶啊，多有意思啊！你看那个 Joe Biden 都说 shut up 了。
In the middle of the COVID crisis, have done very well. Another billionaires have made another $300 billion.
拜登不会睡着了吧？快了。
Because of his profligate tax proposal, and he only focused on the market. But you folks at home. You folks living in Scranton and Claymont and all the small towns and working class towns in America, how well are you doing? This guy paid a total of $750 in taxes.
Sir, wait, no, sir, it's just yeah, I understand. You've agreed to the 2 minutes, so please let him have it.
Do I get my time back? The fact is that he has, in fact, worked on this in a way that he's going to be the first president of the United States to leave office having fewer jobs in his administration than when he became president. Fewer jobs than when he became president. First one in American history. Secondly, the people who have lost their jobs are those people who have been on the front lines, those people who have been saving our lives, those people who have been out there dying, people who've been putting themselves in the way to make sure that we could all try to make it. And the idea that he is insisting that we go forward and open when you have almost half the states in America with a significant increase in COVID deaths and COVID cases in the United States of America. And he wants to open it up more. Why does he want to open it up? Why doesn't he take care of the American? You can't fix the economy until you fix the COVID crisis. And he has no intention of doing anything about making it better for you all at home in terms of your health and your safety. Schools. Why are schools open? Because it costs a lot of money to open them safely. You know, they were going to give, his administration was going to give the teachers and school students masks. And then they decided, no, couldn't do that because it's not a national emergency. Not a national emergency. They've done nothing to help small businesses. Nothing. They're closing. 1 in 6 is now gone. He ought to get on the job and take care of the needs of the American people so we can open safely.
All right. Your time is up, sir. Well, we are going to get to...
I have to respond to that.
Well, you both had 2 minutes, sir.
Excuse me, he made a statement.
So did you.
People want their schools open. They don't want to be shut down. They don't want their state shut down. They want their restaurants. I look at New York. It's so sad what's happening in New York. It's almost like a ghost town. And I'm not sure it can ever recover what they've done in New York. People want their places open. They want to get back to their lives. They'll be careful, but they want their schools open. I'm the one that brought back football. By the way, I brought back Big Ten football. It was me, and I'm very happy to do it. And the people of Ohio are very proud of me. And you know how I found out? When he took
gentlemen,
the phony
we're going to get to your economic plans going forward in a moment. But first, Mr. President, as you well know, there's a new report that in 2016, the year you were elected president, and 2017, your first year as president, that you paid $750 a year in federal income tax. Each of those years. I know that you pay a lot of other taxes, but I'm asking you the specific question. Is it true that you paid $750 in federal income taxes each of those 2 years?
I paid millions of dollars in taxes, millions of dollars of income tax. And let me just tell you, There was a story in one of the papers. I paid $38 million one year. I paid $27 million one year. I went. You'll see it as soon as it's finished. You'll see it. You know, if you want to go to the Board of Elections. There's a 118-page or so report that says everything I have, every bank I have, I'm totally under-leveraged because the assets are extremely good. And I built a great company.
I'm asking you a specific question, which is...
But let me tell you...
I understand all of that. I understand I'm asking you a question. Will you tell us how much you paid in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017?
Millions of dollars.
You paid millions of dollars?
Millions of dollars,
So not 750?
Millions of dollars. And you'll get to see it. But let me just tell you, Chris, let me just tell you something, that it was the tax laws. I don't want to pay tax. Before I came here, I was a private developer. I was a private business people. Like every other private person, unless they're stupid, they go through the laws, and that's what it is. He passed a tax bill that gave us all these privileges for depreciation and for tax credits. We build a building and we get tax credits like the hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue. You get a massive, which, by the way, was given to me by the Obama administration, if you can believe that. Now, the man got fired right after that happened. But
Vice President Biden, you want to respond?
Yeah, I do want to respond.
逃税
Look, the tax code that made him
不是逃税啊，川普总统在合理的解释怎么是合理的避税，就是你们奥巴马总统给我权利让我合理避税的，你们给我权利让我合理避税的，到现在来查我，你这不是给挖个坑让我跳吗？
And he does take advantage of the tax code. That's why I'm going to eliminate the Trump tax cuts. And we're going to eliminate those tax cuts and make sure that we invest in the people who, in fact, need the help. People out there need help.
But why didn't you do it over the last 25 years?
Because you weren't president. Because you weren't president screwing things up.
You were a senator.
You're the worst president America has ever had.
Hey, Joe, let me just tell you, Joe. I've done more in 47 months. I've done more than you've done in 47 years, Joe. We've done things that you never even thought of doing, including fixing the broken military that you gave me, including taking care of your vets.
Mr. President, we're talking about the economy. I'd like to ask you about your plans going forward because, Mr. Vice President, your economic plan, if you were to be elected president, focuses a lot on big government, big taxes, big spending. I want to focus first on the taxes. You propose more than $4 trillion over a decade in new taxes on individuals making more than $400,000 a year and on corporations. President Trump says that kind of an increase in taxes is going to hurt the economy as it's just coming out of the recession.
Well, just take a look at what the analysis done by Wall Street firms.
不是这个拜登啊，我感觉他稍微反应有点慢啊，就是这年纪我记得差不多吧，这两个老头年纪差不多，但是一个是处于痴呆症的进行期了，另外一个还挺有活力的。
That we're going to make the federal government spend $600 billion a year on everything from ships to steel to buildings and the like. And under my proposal, we're going to make sure that every penny of that has to be made by a company.
But respectfully, sir, I'm talking about taxes, not spending.
By the way, I'm going to eliminate a significant number of the tax. I'm going to make the corporate tax 28%. It shouldn't be 21%. You have 91 companies
从21%的税要征到28%。拜登上台，企业家倒霉了。
Because you in fact passed that. That was your tax proposal.
I got it done. And you know what happened?
Yeah, you got it done.
Our economy boomed like it's never boomed.
The economy is busted. Let me finish.
Mr. President, let me pick up on that. You would continue your free market approach, lower taxes, more deregulation, correct?
Not lower taxes for American people.
But in Obama's, you talk about the economy booming, it turns out that in Obama's final 3 years as president, more jobs were created, 1.5 million more jobs than in the first 3 years of your presidency.
They had the slowest recovery since economic recovery since 1929.
前任奥巴马政府那个经济回暖
something that was down here. All you had to do is turn on the lights and you pick up a lot. But they had the slowest economic recovery since 1929. Let me tell you about the stock market. When the stock market goes up, it means jobs. It also means 401ks. If you got in, if you ever became president with your ideas, you want to terminate my taxes, I'll tell you what, you'll lose half of the companies that have poured in here will leave, and plenty of companies that are already here, they'll leave for other places.
我们现在这个税收政策能让很多企业回来。如果他妈你当选总统了，回来的企业都得跑啊。
The worst recession short of a depression in American history. I was asked to bring it back. We were able to have an economic recovery that created the jobs you're talking about. We handed him a booming economy. He blew it.
It wasn't booming.
He blew it.
It wasn't booming. It was the weakest recovery since 1929.
Is it fair to say he blew it when fact, when there was record low unemployment before COVID?
Yeah, but because what he did, even before COVID, manufacturing went in the hole. Manufacturing went in the hole.
Excuse
number
me,
one.
Chris. Wait.
Number two.
Chris.
Number three.
They said it would take. No, you were number two.
No.
Chris, they said it would take a miracle to bring back manufacturing. I brought back 700,000 jobs. They brought back nothing. They gave up on manufacturing. Part of my standard fare.
他说，川普说我们带回来很多工厂，我们带回来很多工作机会，他们什么都没带回来。
Brought them back right here in the state of Ohio and Michigan. He blew it. They're gone. He blew it. And in fact, they're going.
Ohio had the best year it's ever had last year. Michigan had the best year they've ever had.
That is not
Many
true.
car companies came in from Germany, from Japan, went to Michigan, went to Ohio.
They're not having that.
And they didn't come in with you.
Mr. Vice President, go ahead.
And so you take a look at what he's actually done. He's done very little. His trade deals are the same way. He talks about these great trade deals.
看看他干了些什么？他什么都没干，他干了一点点。
China's perfected the art of the steal. We have a higher deficit with China now than we did before. We have the highest trade deficit with Mexico.
All right, gentlemen,
我们有更多的那个 trading， 在以前我们有更多的 trading， 和中国有多大贸易啊？现在他弄得没贸易了。
Billions of dollars. Takes out billions of dollars to manage. He makes millions of dollars. And also, while we're at it, why is it, just out of curiosity, the mayor of Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million. What did he do to deserve it? What did he do with Burisma to deserve $183,000?
为什么给你350万？给你老婆350万？
Oh, really? He didn't get $3.5 million?
假消息，假消息，都是假的。
Totally discredited. Totally discredited. And by the way,
well, wait, he didn't get $3.5 million, Joe?
Mr. Vice,
he got $3.5 million.
That is not true.
Oh, really?
Mr. President, it's an open discussion, please.
It's a fact.
Well, you have raised an issue. Let the Vice President answer.
Discredited.
Did Burisma pay him $183,000 a month?
互相指责 discredit， 没有信用。
Mr. President,
my son did nothing wrong at Burisma.
I think he did.
Mr. President, let him answer.
He doesn't want to let me answer because he knows I have the truth. His position has been totally discredited.
By who? The media?
By everybody. Well, by the media, by our allies, by the World Bank, by everyone. It's discredited. Matter of fact, Mr. President, who testified under oath.
So let me ask you this.
他发誓来着，他发誓来着，他发誓，他说跳楼来着。
He got $3.5 million from Moscow.
He testified under oath in his administration, said, I did my job and I did it very well.
Oh,
I
really?
did it
I'd
honorably.
like to know who they are.
Well, I'll give you the list of the people who testified.
Go ahead.
You've already fired most of them because they did a good job.
Some people don't do a good job. With you,
go ahead. Wait a minute. You get the final word, Mr.
Well, it's hard to get any word in with this clown. Excuse me. This.
Hey, let me just tell you.
No. Mr. President.
$3.5 million, Joe.
That is simply
Why did he deserve $3.5 million from Moscow?
为什么他跟莫斯科要了350万美元？
Families and ethics.
你说
I don't want to do that. I mean, his family we could talk about all night. His family's already.
My family lost a fortune.
And that's such a
Every single one of them lost.
This is not about my family or his family. It's about your family, the American people. He doesn't. That's not true. It doesn't want to talk about what you need, you, the American people. It's about you. That's what we're talking about here.
All right, that's the end of the segment. We're moving on.
川普总统不想提你们美国人家庭，你们需要什么？不想提你们家。
The answer to the question is no.
Ukraine.
No, sir.
With $1 billion.
That is absolutely not true.
You're going to have
true,
gentlemen. I hate to raise my voice, but it seems to me, why shouldn't I be different than the two of you? So here's the deal.
Good point.
We have 6 segments. We have ended that segment. We're going to go to the next segment. In that segment, you each are going to have 2 uninterrupted moments. In those 2 uninterrupted minutes, Mr. President, you can say anything you want. I'm going to ask a question about race, but if you want to answer about something else, go ahead.
还得现场维持秩序，现场发布，重新再强调一遍纪律，纪律，你们有没有点纪律了？ 你说话的时候你别说话，你说话的时候你别打搅，是吧？
That's all right, but he does plenty.
Well, less than, sir, less than,
plenty.
No, less than you have. Let's please continue on. The issue of race. Vice President Biden, you say that President Trump's response to the violence in Charlottesville 3 years ago, when he talked about very fine people on both sides, was what directly led you to launch this run for president.
Oh, yeah, sure.
President Trump, you have often said that you believe you have done more for black Americans than any president, with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln. My question for the 2 of you is, why should voters trust you rather than your opponent to deal with the race issues facing this country over the next 4 years? Vice President Biden, you go first.
好，前副总统拜登，你先说啊，为什么选民们要选你，是吧？在未来的4年里。
Trying to require equity for everyone, equality for the whole of America. But we've never accomplished it. But we've never walked away from it like he has done. It is true. The reason I got in the race is when those people, close your eyes, remember what those people look like coming out of the fields carrying torches, their veins bulging, spewing anti-Semitic bile, and accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan. A young woman got killed. And they asked the president what he thought. He said there were very fine people on both sides. No president's ever said anything like that.
It is who's
now
second, sir.
Second point I'd make
学术比学术辩论差很远，是吧？这政治辩论就是血淋淋的，政治辩论就是血淋淋的。现在说这个
What did he do? He came out of his bunker, had the military use tear gas on him so he could walk across to a church and hold up a Bible.
主持人是白左吧？
And then what happened?
这种主持人应该
The
不
bishop
设
of
立
that
场
very church said that it was the disgrace.
应该不设立
The
场。
general who was with him said all he ever wants to do is divide people, not unite people at all. This is a president who has used everything as a dog whistle to try to generate racist hatred, racist division. This is a man who, in fact, you talk about helping African Americans. 1 in 1,000 African Americans has been killed because of the coronavirus. And if he doesn't do something quickly, by the end of the year, 1 in 500 will have been killed. 1 in 500 African Americans. This man is the savior of African Americans. This man cares at all. This man's done virtually nothing. Look, the fact is that you have to look at what he talks about. You have to look at what he did, and what he did has been disastrous for the African American community.
So, President Trump, you have 2 minutes. Why should Americans trust you over your opponent to deal with racism?
He did a crime bill, 1994, where you call them super predators, African Americans, the super predators, and they've never forgotten it. They've never forgotten it, Joe.
No, sir, it's his 2 minutes.
So you did that, and they call you a super predator, and I'm letting people out of jail now that you have treated the African American population community, you have treated the black community about as bad as anybody in this country. You did the 1990, and that's why, if you look at the polls, I'm doing better than any Republican has done in a long time, because they saw what you did. You call them super predators, and you've called them worse than that. Because you look back at your testimony over the years, you've called them a lot worse than that. As far as the church is concerned, and as far as the generals are concerned, we just got the support of 250 military leaders and generals, total support. Law enforcement, almost every law enforcement group in the United States. I have Florida, I have Texas, I have Ohio, I have Portland. The sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump. I don't think you have any law enforcement. You can't even say the word law enforcement, because if you say those words, you're going to lose all of your radical left supporters. And why aren't you saying those words, Joe? Why don't you say the words law enforcement? Because you know what? If they called us in Portland, we would put out that fire in a half an hour, but they won't do it because they're run by radical left Democrats. If you look at Chicago, if you look at any place you want to look, Seattle, They heard we were coming in the following day, and they put up their hands, and we got back Seattle. Minneapolis, we got it back, Joe, because we believe in law and order, but you don't. The top 10 cities and just about the top 40 cities are run by Democrats and in many cases radical left. And they've got you wrapped around their finger, Joe, to a point where you don't want to say anything about law and order. And I'll tell you what, the people of this country want and demand law and order, and you're afraid to even say it.
All right. I want to return to the question of race. Vice President Biden, after the grand jury in the Breonna Taylor case decided not to charge any of the police with homicide, you said it raises the question, quote, whether justice could be equally applied in America. Do you believe that there is a separate but unequal system of justice for blacks in this country?
Yes, there is. There's systemic injustice in this country, in education and work and in law enforcement and the way in which it's enforced. But look, the vast majority of police officers are good, decent, honorable men and women. They risk their lives every day to take care of us. But there are some bad apples. And when they occur, when they find them, they have to be sorted out. They have to be held accountable. They have to be held accountable. And what I'm going to do as President of the United States is call together an entire group of people at the White House, well, everything from the civil rights groups to the police officers, to the police chiefs, and we're going to work this out. We're going to work this out so we change the way in which we have more transparency in when these things happen. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to George Floyd. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to Breonna Taylor. Most don't like it. But we have to have a system where people are held accountable. And by the way, violence in response is never appropriate. Never appropriate. Peaceful protest is. Violence is never appropriate.
All right,
what is peaceful protest? When they run through the middle of the town and burn down your stores and kill people all over the place? That is not peaceful protest.
President Trump,
no, it's not, but you say it is.
President Trump, I'd like to continue with the issue of race. I promise we're going to get to the issue of law and order in a moment. This month, your administration directed federal agencies to end racial sensitivity training that addresses white privilege or critical race theory. Why did you decide to do that, to end racial sensitivity training? And do you believe that there is systemic racism in this country, sir?
I ended it because it's racist. I ended it because a lot of people were complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane, that it was a radical revolution that was taking place in our military, in our schools, all over the place, and you know it, and so does everybody else. And he would know.
What is radical about racial sensitivity training, sir?
If you were a certain person, you had no status in life. It was sort of a reversal. And if you look at the people, we were paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars to teach very bad ideas and, frankly, very sick ideas. And really, they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to allow that to happen.
他认为这个 training 呢，就是教给别人怎么判断什么叫种族歧视啊，教给你洗脑，知道吧？你们就得那个跪下舔，那个给我舔舔鞋，给我舔舔脚 ，give me a knee， 是不是
？He's the racist. Here's the deal. I know a lot more about this.
Let him finish.
The fact is that there is racial insensitivity. People have to be made aware of what other people feel like, what insults them, what is demeaning to them. It's important to people know. They don't want that. Many people don't want to hurt other people's feelings.
让别人知道哪些是敏感词儿，哪些不能提，哪些话语是涉及到种族歧视的，你得教，对吧？
This guy and his friends look down on so many people. They look down their nose on people like Irish Catholics like me and grew up in Scranton. They look down on people who don't have money. They look down on people who are of a different faith. They look down on people who are a different color. In fact, we're all Americans. The only way we're going to bring this country together is bring everybody together. There's nothing we cannot do if we do it together. We can take this on and we can defeat racism in America.
President Trump, sir.
During the Obama-Biden administration, there was tremendous division. There was hatred. You look at Ferguson, you look at You go to many places. Look at Oakland. Look what happened in Oakland. Look what happened in Baltimore. Look what happened. Frankly, it was more violent than what I'm even seeing now.
Oh, my
but
Lord.
the reason is that the Democrats that run these cities don't want to talk like you about law and order. Are you in favor of law and order?
I'm in favor of law. You follow it.
Are you in favor of law and order? Go ahead.
You asked a question. Let him finish.
Law and order.
Let him.
Law and order with justice, where people get treated fairly. Okay. And the fact of the matter is, violent crime went down 15% in our administration.
All right.
It's gone up on his watch.
Went down much more in ours.
All right, we're now. Mr. President, you're going to. Mr. President,
every record in the book.
Mr. President, you're going to be very happy because we're now going to talk about law and order.
Places we had trouble were Democratic-run cities.
That's exactly my question. There has been a dramatic increase in homicides in America this summer particularly, and you often blame that on Democratic mayors and Democratic governors, but in fact there have been equivalent spikes in Republican-led cities like Tulsa and Fort Worth. So the question is this really a party issue?
I think it's a party issue. You can bring in a couple of examples, but if you look at Chicago, what's going on in Chicago, where
民主党的地盘，民主党的市长，他们这地方有暴力，他们这地方就因为民主党执政，他们可是其他地方也有，基本上是一致的，不管是民主党还是共和党所执政的州，都有同样的暴力事件。
And he doesn't want to say law and order because he can't, because he'll lose his radical left supporters, and once he does that, it's over with. But if he ever got to run this country, and they ran it the way he would want to run it, our suburbs would be gone. By the way, our suburbs would be gone, and you would see problems like you've never seen.
He would know a suburb unless he took a wrong turn.
Oh, I know suburbs.
He would not.
So much
Go ahead. Wait a minute.
I was raised in the suburbs. This is not 1950. All these dog whistles and racism don't work anymore. Suburbs are by and large integrated. There's many people today driving their kids to soccer practice and or to black and white and Hispanic in the same car as there have been any time in the past. What really is a threat to the suburbs and their safety is his failure to deal with COVID. They're dying in the suburbs. His failure to deal with the environment. They're being flooded. They're being burned out because his refusal to do anything. That's why the suburbs are in trouble.
I do want to talk about this issue of law and order, though. And in the joint recommendation that came from the Biden-Bernie Sanders task force, you talked about, quote, reimagining policing. Yeah. First of all, what does reimagining policing mean, and do you support?
It means.
Let me, if I might finish the question. What does reimagining policing mean, and do you support the Black Lives Matter call for community control of policing?
Look,
community
what
control
I support
of policing.
is the police having the
警力控制
opportunity to deal with the
减少警力
problems
这
they
个事儿。
face. And I'm totally opposed to defunding the police offices. As a matter of fact, local police, the only one defunding it, his budget calls for a $400 million cut in local law enforcement assistance. They need more assistance. They need, when they show up for a 9/11 call, to have someone with them as a psychologist or psychiatrist to keep them from having to use force and be able to talk people down. We have to have community policing like we had before, where the officers get to know the people in the communities. That's when crime went down. It didn't go up, it went down. And so we have to be engaged.
That's not what they're talking about, Chris. That's not what he's talking about defunding the police.
That is not true.
He doesn't have any law support.
Look,
he has no law enforcement support.
That's not true.
Almost nothing.
Look.
Oh, really? Who do you have? Name one group that supports you. Name one group that came out and supported you. Go ahead. Think. We have time.
We don't have time to do anything.
All right. 对不起，我没时间说那个。
Name one law enforcement group that came out and supported
gentlemen,
you.
I think I'm going to take back the moderator's role, and I want to get to another subject, which is the issue of protests in many cities that have turned violent. In Portland, Oregon, especially, we had more than 100 straight days of protests, which I think you would agree. You talk about peaceful protests. Many of those turned into riots.
说 Portland 那个独立的那个地方吧，宣布独立的地方。
People who commit crimes should be held accountable. The question I have, though, is, as the Democratic nominee, and earlier tonight you said that you are the Democratic Party right now, have you ever called the Democratic mayor of Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon and said, hey, you got to stop this, bring in the National Guard, do whatever it takes, but you stop the days and months of violence in Portland?
I don't hold public office now. I am a former vice president.
问他你有没有那个要求这个民主党去这个制止 Portland 的这个暴力游行事件。
Never called for the people, the leader. Excuse me, sir.
他说对不起，我不管，我不管。
Leaders in Portland and in Oregon to bring in the National Guard and knock off 100 days of riots.
They can, in fact, take care of it if he just stay out of the way. Look here.
Oh, really?
Oh,
really?
Here's the thing.
你们离他远点，他如果碰到你们了。
The killer of a young man in the middle of the street. They shot him, and for 3 days,
President Trump,
Portland wouldn't do anything. I had to send in the U.S. Marshals. They took care of business.
Go ahead, sir.
And by the way, his own former spokesperson said, riots and chaos and violence help his cause. That's what this is all about.
I don't know who said that.
I do.
Who?
I think Kellyanne Conway.
I don't think she said that.
She said that. And so here's the here's the point. The point is that's what he keeps trying to rile everything up. He doesn't want to calm things down. Instead of going in and talking to people and saying, let's get everybody together, figure out how to deal with this. What's he do? He just pours gasoline in the fire constantly, every single solitary time.
Okay, and to button up this segment, I'm going to give you a minute to answer, sir. You have repeatedly criticized.
Wait, I have to answer his statement.
No, you have repeatedly. No, you've been talking back and forth.
He made a statement.
I'm asking you.
I would love to end it.
Sir.
I would love to end it.
If you want to switch seats.
We could very quickly.
We could do that, but
I'd send in the National Guard. It would be over. There'd be no problem.
Okay.
But they don't want to accept the National Guard.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
are you
I'm
prepared
to
specifically
do it?
Well, go ahead, sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Do it.
Say it. Do you want to call them? What do you want to call them? Give me a name. Give me a
white
name.
Supremacists and
who would you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and Proud
Boys. Stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing. This is a left-wing problem.
White supremacists. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you got it.
Not militia. That's what his
Antifa 不是个 organization， 不是个组织，就是一个主义。
No, we're done, sir. We're moving on to the next. We're moving.
That's not an idea.
Everybody in your administration tells you the truth has a bad idea.
Can I tell you what?
You have no ideas.
Antifa is a dangerous,
all right,
radical
gentlemen,
group.
We're now moving on to the Trump and Biden records.
They'll overthrow you.
When a president,
有点坏啊！一提到 Antifa 这主持人就不让说了。
It is generally a referendum on his record. But Vice President Biden, you like to quote one of your dad's sayings, which is, "Don't compare me to the Almighty, compare me to the alternative." And in this case, sir, you are the alternative. Looking at both of your records, I'm going to ask each of you, why should voters elect you president over your opponent?
我们也没有组织，我们也没有领袖，我们也没有办公室，对不对？但是出去的时候都打旗子。
Administration or president who has done more than I've done in a period of 3.5 years, and that's despite the impeachment hoax. And you saw what happened today with Hillary Clinton, where it was a whole big con job. But despite going through all of these things, where I had to fight both flanks and behind me and above, there has never been an administration that's done what I've done. The greatest, before COVID came in, the greatest economy in history, lowest unemployment numbers. Everything was good. Everything was going. And by the way, there was unity going to happen. People were calling me for the first time in years. They were calling, and they were saying, it's time maybe. And then what happened? We got hit, but now we're building it back up again. A rebuilding of the military, including Space Force and all of the other things. A fixing of the VA, which was a mess under him. 308,000 people died because they didn't have proper health care. It was a mess. And we now got a 91% approval rating at the VA, our vets. We take care of our vets. But we've rebuilt our military. The job that we've done, and I'll tell you something, some people say maybe the most important, By the end of the first term,
他现在还
I'll
在说
have
最近他
approximately
过去这4年执政以
300
来
federal
在
judges and Court of
美国的
Appeals
经济
judges,
重建上
300,
他做出了多少
and
贡献
hopefully 3 great
他为美
Supreme
国
Court
的这个
judges,
经济重振
justices.
还有这个
That is a record the likes of which very few people, and you know one of the reasons I'll have so many judges? Because
还为这个
President Obama
人
and
民健
him
康
left
考
me
虑啊，付出了多少，做出了多少成绩。
judges to fill. When you leave office, you don't leave any judges. That's like you just don't do that. They left 128 openings, and if I were a member of his party, because they have a little different philosophy, I'd say if you left us 128 openings, you can't be a good president, you can't be a good vice president. But I want to thank you because it gives us it'll probably be above that number by the end of this term. 300 judges. It's a record.
Looking at both your records,
300个
why
法
should
官
voters elect you president as opposed to President Trump? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Under this president, we become weaker, sicker,
就因为这个
more divided.
就因为这个总统，我们变他又弱啊，又穷。
We inherited a recession. I was asked to fix it. I did. We left him
我们要重建，我们要重建。
and he caused the recession.
就是他弄的，把咱们国家弄成这样了。我要重建，我要重建。
head with Putin and made it clear to him we're not going to take any of his stuff. He's Putin's puppy. He still refuses to even say anything to Putin about the bounty on the heads of American soldiers. And by the way, my son.
Wait a minute, Mr. President, your campaign agreed to both sides would get 2-minute answers uninterrupted. Well, your side agreed to it, and why don't you observe what your campaign agreed to as a ground rule, okay, sir?
He never keeps his word.
No, I'm not asking. That was a rhetorical question.
Can you
Go
add
ahead,
back
sir.
30 seconds?
Yeah, yes,
okay.
you may have.
All right.
Go ahead.
So, thirdly, we're poor. The billionaires have gotten much more wealthy by a tune of over $300 to $400 billion more just since COVID. You in the home, you got less. You're in more trouble than you were before. In terms of being more violent, when we were in office, there were 15% less violence in America than there is today. He's president of the United States. It's on his watch. And with regard to more divided, the nation can't stay divided. We can't be this way. And speaking of my son, the way you talk about the military, the way you talk about them being losers and being and just being suckers. My son was in Iraq. He spent a year there. He got the Bronze Star. He got the Conspicuous Service Medal. He was not a loser. He was a patriot, and the people left behind there were heroes. And I resent like hell.
Are you talking about
I'm talking about my son, Beau Biden. You're talking about.
I don't know Beau. I know Hunter.
Yeah,
Hunter got thrown out of the military. He was thrown out, dishonorably discharged.
That's not true. He wasn't dishonorably.
Cocaine use. And he didn't have a job until you became vice president. Once you became vice president, he made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
that is simply
and various
not
other places.
True.
He
my
made
son,
假的，不是没那回事儿，我儿子都好着呢。
like a lot of people we know at home, had a drug problem. He's overtaken. He's fixed it. He's worked on it. And I'm proud of him.
But why was he given tens of millions of dollars?
But he wasn't given tens of millions of dollars. That is totally discredited.
You've already been
discredited.
We've already been through this. I think the American people would rather hear about more substantial subjects. Well, you know, as the moderator, sir, I'm going to make a judgment call here.
Gets $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow.
Let's talk about
that.
True. Gentlemen, that report is totally discredited. Mitt Romney on that committee said it wasn't worth taxpayers' money, that report. It was written for political reasons.
You know, I'd like to talk about climate change.
So would I.
Okay. The forest fires in the West are raging now. They have burned millions of acres. They have displaced hundreds of thousands of people. When state officials there blame the fires on climate change, Mr. President, you said, I don't think the science knows. Over your 4 years, you have pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord. You have rolled back a number of Obama environmental records. What do you believe about the science of climate change, and what will you do in the next 4 years to confront it?
I want crystal clean water and air. I want beautiful, clean air. We have now the lowest carbon. If you look at our numbers right now,
听得闹心，还是听妄议吧，是吧？
But I haven't destroyed our businesses. Our businesses aren't put out of commission. If you look at the Paris Accord, it was a disaster from our standpoint. And people are actually very happy about what's going on because our businesses are doing well. As far as the fires are concerned, you need forest management in addition to everything else. The forest floors are loaded up with trees, dead trees that are years old, and they're like tinder, and leaves and everything else. You drop a cigarette in there, the whole forest burns down.
我们澳大利亚这个山火控制呢，是要定期烧的。美国这个山火控制呢是不允许烧的，就是因为要搞这个绿化高于一切。你看绿化也整到总统话题上来了，就问你种不种树是吧？那个说你砍不砍树是吧？你种树你砍树得立见高下，这简直就是个陷阱，知道吧？这植被呀，你得有规模的就控制，你得别让它长疯了。你要长疯了，就一次山火，你谁都受不了。
California is burning. If that was cleaned, if you had forest management, good forest management, you wouldn't be getting those calls. You know, in Europe, they live their forest cities. They call forest cities. They maintain their forests. They manage their forests. I was with the head of a major country. It's a forest city. He said, "Sir, we have trees that are far more, they ignite much easier than California. There shouldn't be that problem." I spoke with the governor about it. I'm getting along very well with the governor. But I said, you know, at some point, you can't every year have hundreds of thousands of acres of land just burned to the ground. That's burning down because of a lack of management.
But, sir, if you believe in the science of climate change, why have you rolled back the Obama Clean Power Plan, which limited carbon emissions in power plants? Why have you relaxed?
Because it was driving energy prices through the sky.
Why have you relaxed fuel economy standards that are going to create more pollution from cars?
Well, not really, because what's happening is the car is much less expensive and it's a much safer.
这个绿化控制不是说你烧了树了你就增加二氧化碳排放了，不是这么玩的。你如果不有效的、不有规模的来控制这个绿化，来有效的控制、有规模的来这个隔离，一旦失控了，你烧的不是二氧化碳啊，你不是说二氧化碳排放了多了还是少了，你烧人了。
So, and by the way, we're going to see how that turns out. But a lot of people agree with me. Many people. The car has gotten so expensive because they have computers all over the place for an extra little bit of gasoline. And I'm okay with electric cars too. I think I'm all for electric cars. I've given big incentives for electric cars. But what they've done in California is just crazy.
Vice President Biden, I'd like you to respond to the president's climate change record, but I also want to ask you about a concern. You proposed $2 trillion in green jobs. You talk about new limits, not abolishing, but new limits on fracking, ending the use of fossil fuels to generate electricity by 2035, and zero net emission of greenhouse gases by 2050. The president says a lot of these things would tank the economy and cost millions of jobs.
He's absolutely wrong, number one. Number two, if in fact, during our administration, the Recovery Act, I was in charge, able to bring down the cost of renewable energy to cheaper than or as cheap as coal and gas and oil. Nobody's going to build another coal-fired plant in America. No one's going to build another oil-fired plant in America. They're going to move to renewable energy, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that we are able to take the federal fleet and turn it into a fleet that's run on their electric vehicles. Making sure that we can do that, we're going to put 500,000 charging stations and all of the highways that we're going to be building in the future. We're going to build an economy that, in fact, is going to provide for the ability us to take 4 million buildings and make sure that they, in fact, are weatherized in a way that, in fact, they'll emit significantly less gas and oil because the heat will not be going out. There's so many things that we can do now to create thousands and thousands of jobs. We can get to net zero in terms of energy production by 2035. Not only not costing people jobs, creating millions of good-paying jobs, not $15 an hour, but prevailing wage. by having a new infrastructure that, in fact, is green. And the first thing I will do, I will rejoin the Paris Accord. I will join the Paris Accord because with us out of it, look what's happening. It's all falling apart. And talk about someone who has no relationship with foreign policy. Brazil, the rainforests of Brazil are being torn down, are being ripped down. More carbon is absorbed in that rainforest than every bit of carbon that's emitted in the United States. Instead of doing something about that, I would be gathering up and making sure we had the countries of the world coming up with $20 billion and say, here's $20 billion. Stop.
其实我觉得这个碳排放绿化这个事情不应该成为一个政治话题，或者是一个政治竞选的一个辩论题目吧。有点这是人类发展的必然经历啊！你说人类想发展，你就得有工业，有工业势必会造成环境污染，这个是一个大家应该共同面对的。怎么能可以这来
？You can now emit more methane without it being a problem. Methane. This is a guy who says that you don't have to have mileage standards for automobiles that exist now. This is the guy who says that, well, the fact that it's all true. And here's the deal.
He's talking about the Green New Deal, and it's not $2 billion or $20 billion, as you said. It's $100 trillion.
I'm talking about
where they want to rip down buildings and rebuild the buildings. It's ridiculous. Where airplanes are out of business, where two-car systems are out, where they want to take out the cows too. You know, that's not true either, right? This is a $100 trillion. Look, that's more money than our country could make in 100 years if we're
not
going to
the case.
All right, let me
destroy our
because
country.
I actually wait a minute, sir. I actually have studied your plan, and it includes upgrading 4 million buildings, weatherizing 2 million homes over 4 years, building 1.5 million energy-efficient homes. So the question becomes, the president is saying, some people who support the president would say that sounds like it's going to cost a lot of money and hurt the economy.
What it's going to do is going to create thousands and millions of jobs, good-paying jobs.
But let him finish, sir.
He doesn't know how to do that.
他不会弄，我们才会弄。
Millions of good-paying jobs, and these tax incentives for people to weatherize, which he wants to get
100万个高薪职业，就是不想弄到55块钱1小时的，我们
to deal with the hurricanes, deal
我们弄16块钱的，有本事弄16块5的。
Maybe we should drop a nuclear weapon on them. They may.
I never said that.
That's what he did say.
You made it up.
And here's the deal.
我可没说过造核弹啊，他说的。
We can create hard, good jobs by making sure the environment is clean and we all are in better shape. We spend billions of dollars now, on floods, hurricanes, rising seas. We're in real trouble. Look what's happened just in the Midwest with these storms that come through and wipe out entire sections and counties in Iowa. That didn't happen before. Because of global warming.
放弃核能，什么用太阳能，我觉得政客最不应该说这话。你有那2下吗？是吧？你自己想的再怎么样，如果没有企业、没有科学的支持，你不放屁吗？
Why didn't you get the world? China sends up real dirt into the air. Russia does, India does, they all do. We're supposed to be good. And by the way, he made a couple of statements. The Green New Deal is $100 trillion.
That is
not
$20 billion. My plan.
That's
the Green New
you want to rebuild every
Deal.
building.
Not my plan.
You want to rebuild every building.
If he knew anything about, if he knew anything
he made a statement about the
你看
military.
一说到环境保护，你说这些国家就没完没了了，是不是？环境保护这不是一个国家可以做到的事儿。你说我们澳大利亚是吧？我们澳大利亚真的是环境保护典范，全球环境保护最爱环境的一个国家，没有之一啊，就是澳大利亚。可是澳大利亚人口才多点啊，对环境破坏起不到什么作用。你想用澳大利亚这个人口来拯救全球环境，也是痴心妄想的。主要战场不在澳洲啊。
But and about the economy and about this question of what it's going to cost.
The economy.
I mean, the Green New Deal and the idea of what your environmental changes will do.
The Green New Deal will pay for itself as we move forward. We're not going to build plants that, in fact, are great polluting plants.
So do you support the Green New Deal?
Pardon me?
Do you support?
No, I don't support the Green New Deal.
Oh, you don't? Oh, well, that's a big statement.
I support
the radical left.
I support the Biden plan that I put forward.
Okay.
the Biden plan, which is different than what he calls the radical Green New Deal.
All right, gentlemen, final segment, election integrity. As we meet tonight, millions of Americans are receiving mail-in ballots or going to vote early. How confident should we be that this will be a fair election? And what are you prepared to do over the next 5+ weeks, because it'll not only be to Election Day, but also counting some ballots, mail-in ballots after Election Day? What are you prepared to do to reassure the American people that the next president will be the legitimate winner of this election? In this final segment, Mr. Vice President, you go first.
你们在剩下的5周时间里边，你们怎么能保证下一届总统对美国人有利，是吧？
His own Homeland Security Director, and as well as the FBI Director, says there is no evidence at all that mail-in ballots are a source of being manipulated and cheating. They said that. The fact is that there are going to be millions of people because of COVID that are going to be voting by mail-in ballots, like he does, by the way. He sits behind the Resolute desk and sends his ballot to Florida, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that those people who want to vote in person are able to vote because enough poll watchers are there to make sure they can socially distance. The polls are open on time, and the polls stay open until the votes are counted. And this is all about trying to dissuade people from voting because he's trying to scare people into thinking that it's not going to be legitimate. Show up and vote. You will determine the outcome of this election. Vote, vote, vote. If you're able to vote early in your state, vote early. If you're able to vote in person, vote in person. Vote whatever way is the best way for you, because he cannot stop you from being able to determine the outcome of this election. And in terms of whether or not when the votes are counted, and they're all counted, that will be accepted. If I win, that will be accepted. If I lose, that'll be accepted. But by the way, if in fact he says he's not sure what he's going to accept, well, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter, because if we get the votes, it's going to be all over. He's going to go. He can't stay in power. It won't happen. It won't happen. So vote. Just make sure
就投票吧，投票吧！你们只要投票，他就下台了。你们只要投票，他就下台了。
This country's going to look like the next 4 years. Is it going to change? You're going to get 4 more years of these lies.
Mr. President, 2 minutes.
So when I listened to Joe talking about a transition, there's been no transition from when I won. I won that election. And if you look at crooked Hillary Clinton, if you look at all of the different people, there was no transition, because they came after me trying to do a coup. They came after me spying on my campaign. They started from the day I won, and even before I won, from the day I came down the escalator with our First Lady. They were a disaster. They were a disgrace to our country. And we've caught them. We've caught them all. We've got it all on tape. We've caught them all. And by the way, you gave the idea for the Logan Act against General Flynn. You better take a look at that, because we caught you in a sense. And President Obama was sitting in the office. He knew about it too. So don't tell me about a free transition. As far as the ballots are concerned, it's a disaster. A solicited ballot. Okay, solicited is okay. You're soliciting, you're asking, they send it back, you send it back. I get that. If you have an unsolicited, they're sending millions of ballots all over the country. There's fraud. They found them in creeks. They found some with the name Trump. Just happened to have the name Trump just the other day in a waste paper basket. They're being sent all over the place. They sent 2 in a Democrat area. They sent out 1,000 ballots. Everybody got 2 ballots. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen. The other thing, it's nice on November 3rd, you're watching and you see who won the election. And I think we're going to do well, because people are really happy with the job we've done. But you know what? We won't know. We might not know for months, because these ballots are going to be all over. Take a look at what happened in Manhattan. Take a look at what happened in New Jersey. Take a look at what happened in Virginia and other places. They're not losing 2%, 1%, which, by the way, is too much. An election could be won or lost with that. They're losing 30 and 40%. It's a fraud, and it's a shame. And can you imagine where they say you have to have your ballot in by November 10th? November 10th. That means that's 7 days after the election, in theory, should have been announced.
Okay.
We have major states with that.
Sir,
all run by Democrats.
2 minutes is 2 minutes.
All run by Democrats. It's
President Trump.
It's a rigged election.
You're going to be able to continue. You have been charging for months that mail-in balloting is going to be a disaster. You say it's rigged, that it's going to lead to fraud. But in 2018, in the last midterm election, 31 million people voted mail-in voting. That was a quarter, more than a quarter of all the voters that year cast their ballots by mail. Now that millions of mail-in ballots have gone out, what are you going to do about it? And are you counting on the Supreme Court, including a Justice Barrett, to settle any dispute?
Yeah, I think I'm counting on them to look at the ballots, definitely. I hope we don't need them in terms of the election itself. But for the ballots, I think so. Because what's happening is incredible. I read today where at least 1% of the ballots for 2016 were invalidated. They take them, we don't like them, we don't like them.
But what
they
are you
throw
going to do
them out
about it?
left
If there are millions of ballots going out right now,
what you do is you go and vote. You do a solicited ballot, and that's okay, or you go and vote.
I'm asking you about the fact that millions of people...
You go and vote. You go and vote.
But
like
what I'm
they,
saying is,
like they used to in the old...
Millions of people...
You either do, Chris, a solicited ballot where you're sending it in, they're sending it back, and you're sending... They have mailmen with lots of it. Did you see what's going on? Take a look at West Virginia, mailmen selling the ballots. They're being sold. They're being dumped in rivers. This is a horrible thing for our country. This is not going to end well.
There is no evidence
this is not going to end well.
5 states have had mail-in ballots for the last decade or more. 5, including 2 Republican states. And you don't have to solicit the ballot. It's sent to you. It's sent to your home. What we're saying is, they're saying is that it has to be a postmark by the time, by election day. If it doesn't get in until the 7th, 8th, 9th, it still should be counted. He's just afraid of counting the votes because
you're wrong. You're wrong.
I want to continue with you on Vice President Biden. In fact, no, excuse me. Vice President Biden, the biggest problem, in fact, over the years with mail-in voting has not been fraud historically. It has been that sizable numbers, sometimes hundreds of thousands of ballots are thrown out because they have not been properly filled out or there is some other irregularity or they missed the deadline. So the question I have is, are you concerned that the Supreme Court with a Justice Barrett will settle any dispute?
I'm concerned that any court would
现在这个说，如果这个选举走到了最高法院，因为前面有例子啊，就是选举当票数接近的时候，最高法院是要来判决要不要重选的。他主持人就问拜登说：“哎，你现在咱们也讨论到这个选举，这个邮寄选票有可能错记或者写的不清楚，或者种种理由。万一因为邮寄选举现在有疫情嘛，因为邮寄选举你这个票太接近了，要到最高法院，你怕不怕？”
All right. Excuse me, when you have 80 million ballots sending and swamping the system, you know it can't be done. You know it can't, and already there's been fraud.
Mail service delivers
wait a minute, gentlemen. The final question is, in 8 states, we can keep talking. In 8 states, election workers are prohibited currently by law, 8 states, from even beginning to process ballots, even take them out of the envelopes and flatten them until Election Day. That means that it's likely, because there's going to be a huge increase in mail-in balloting, that we are not going to know on election night who the winner is, that it could be days, it could be weeks,
could be months,
until we find out who the new president is. So first for you, sir, finally for the vice president, I hope neither of you will interrupt the other. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm during this extended period, not to engage in any civil unrest? And will you pledge tonight that you will not declare victory until the election has been independently certified? President Trump, you go first.
I'm urging my supporters to go into the polls and watch very carefully, because that's what has to happen. I am urging them to do it. As you know, today there was a big problem. In Philadelphia, they went in to watch. They're called poll watchers, a very safe, very nice thing. They were thrown out. They weren't allowed to watch. You know why? Because bad things happen in Philadelphia, bad things. And I am urging my people. I hope it's going to be a fair election. If it's a fair election, I am 100% on board. But if I see tens of thousands of ballots being manipulated, I can't go along with that. And I'll tell you what,
does that
from
mean,
a common sense,
does that mean you're going to tell your people to take to the street?
It means you have a fraudulent election. You're sending out 80 million ballots. They're not equipped to. These people aren't equipped to handle it. Number one. Number two, they cheat. They cheat. Hey, they found ballots in a waste paper basket 3 days ago. And they all had the name military ballots. They were military. They all had the name Trump on them.
Vice President
you think
Biden,
that's good?
Vice President Biden, final question for you. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm while the vote is counted, and will you pledge not to declare victory until the election is independently certified?
这个选举人啊，选票选民们，老老实实的，不要那个稍安勿躁，对吧？稍安勿躁，直到选举结果出现的时候。
Take time to do it. And by the way, our military, they've been voting by ballots since the end of the Civil War, in effect. And that's what's going to happen. Why was it not? Why is it for them somehow not fraudulent? It's the same process. It's honest. No one has established at all that there is fraud related to mail-in ballots. That somehow it's a fraudulent process.
It's already been established. Take a look at Carolyn Maloney's race.
I asked you had an opportunity to respond.
Look at Carolyn Maloney.
Go ahead.
They have no idea what happened.
Vice President Biden, go ahead.
He has no idea what he's talking about. Here's the deal. The fact is, I will accept it, and he will too. You know why? Because once the winner is declared, after all the ballots are counted, all the votes are counted, that'll be the end of it. That'll be the end of it. And if it's me, in fact, fine. If it's not me, I'll support the outcome. And I'll be a president not just for the Democrats. I'll be a president for Democrats and Republicans. And this guy,
I want to see an honest ballot count.
Gentlemen, you say that's the end of it? This is the end of this debate?
Honest ballot count.
We're going to leave it there. To be continued as in more debates as we go on. President Trump, Vice President Biden, it's been an interesting hour and a half. I want to thank you both for participating in the first of 3 debates that you have agreed to engage in. We want to thank Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic for hosting this event. The next debate, sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates, will be 1 week from tomorrow, October 7th at the University.
下个礼拜同一个时间啊，再有一场第2场辩论会，这是今天的首场辩论会。今天这个首场辩论会来，最后这几个问题就是说，你们2个人是吧？就都在担心这个去选举作弊的事儿。最近就你看，因为疫情是吧，选举有可能这个选票被人丢啦，或者是选票找不到啦，或者是到选举公布日的时候说，哎，我这选票统计不出来了，是吧？有可能要推迟啊，这个吧那个吧，就闹幺蛾子是吧？尤其是川普总统怕这个闹幺蛾子，然后拜登肯定不怕，因为闹幺蛾子才好，闹幺蛾子我就上去了是吧？所以在台上的就怕闹幺蛾子，主持人镜头最多是吧？啊，今天我们这个妄议热线啊，前半段就是这些话题了啊，咱也不再聊其他的这个问题了。有这个愿意来电话的，跟我们聊一聊，你们看完这段美国的这个选举辩论啊，对我们这个讲中文的这些朋友来说，可能也不少是中国大陆翻墙出来看的。你们作何感想啊？就说这美国政治是不是这个乌七八糟一团乱麻是吧？人家这个上面台上辩论好像要打架似的是吧？已经吵到这种程度了。这种形式的辩论，这种形式的民主制度，你们喜欢不喜欢啊？还是说你辩什么论呢？老子说了算是吧？我说的就是真理，只有我说的才是对的。当然我们那个两个超级大国是吧？一个是超级那个病殃殃大国，一个是超级吹牛逼大国，都是这样子的。你问你们选举了吗？没有。你们有辩论吗？不许辩论，谁敢质疑我们有你八辈祖宗4年前还没有妄议热线呢啊！对，4年前还没有妄议热线。这他妈就是主持人跟川普辩论，哎呀，你们这是各有各的看法，就台上一团乱麻，没有时间折腾老百姓。对了，就是台上要一片和谐，就完球蛋了。你看看咱们中国的一开人民代表大会，那真是台上一片和谐，一说按钮全都按钮，一说选票都1480票比0是吧？要1470几票比1是吧？你说这种这多么和谐的这个政治环境，就绝对不会出乱子是吧？我穿1打2， 台上都一个党了，人民就完蛋了。哎呀，这你说咱们这是，我觉得我们这观众还是心明眼亮的，大家都很清楚，只有让政客们天天在吵架，老百姓才能够有时间来监督政客。如果政客们，如果总统是吧不吵架是吧，总统和下边的这些官员大臣一片祥和，谁也没有监督机制，也没有什么法律问责制，那你就等着你们总统你们8辈祖宗，并且跟你们要钱算了。川粉、郭粉、文革、五毛、邪教徒，本质毫无二致啊！童主任、虫哥、诸位小伙伴们，早中好，早中晚好啊！所以今天川普有赢嘛？哎，这个川普赢没赢，现在不是下结论的时候，我们现在是给一个开放的平台，让所有的人啊，这个尤其是让美国公民来看一看这2位竞选候选人所表现的怎么样，是吧？人家是小丑，人家是上台上表演的，你们下边观众要稍安勿躁，不用提前下结论。你下的结论也不一定就是对的结论，你下的结论也不一定是民意，你老实是吧？等着10月3号公布选举结果的时候，10月10号才公布呢，是吧？但是呢，不排除我有一种感觉啊，今年这次选举不会像2016年那么悬念那么大，这是在我看来啊，悬念可能不大，可能会出现一边倒的倾向，或者是可能会出现某些州翻红啊，这个都有可能啊，这是我的看法，我的想法啊，这是每个人都有自己不同的观点和看法的。不好意思，刚才跑英体那里停了啊，谢谢黄北海，谢谢。看新闻主持人特别的说拜登表现安好，上拳踢场有打倒对手吗？很多人都不看好川普是吧？大嘴巴，说的话都不靠谱是吧？川普呢，这个人呢，我觉得他有他的特点，有他的特色，他能做到的事儿，他承诺的事儿，我觉得他做到了。但是他那个大嘴巴也是够让人讨厌的是吧？跟那个流氓一样啊！我觉得川普的这个作风，人品啊不好，人品不好。但是话说回来，这目前啊，2017年到2020年这3年期间，越来越多的美国人意识到，这美国的叫什么？美国的敌人不是美国的政治，美国政治这是一个公平的一个舞台，公平的一个角斗场，谁上来都行。但是老百姓拿选票的老百姓是要选择自己的未来的，是要选择自己将来在世界上能不能继续当老大的。我觉得这美国这个军事强国、科技强国、政治强国、世界超级强国这个地位，如果有人想试图动摇，你别管你是什么制度，真的，我这个人说，咱也不用非说这个民主制度怎么样，这个什么独裁制度怎么样，无论是什么制度，当作为一个叫做丛林法则，你在丛林当中失去主导地位的时候，你在丛林当中失去捕猎的能力的时候，你就胆小了。这个地位，无论你是什么制度，绝对不会失去的，咱们就等着瞧吧。美国的教育体系严重左倾，非常严重的问题，年年向社会输出大量马克思主义性。主持人拉偏架就可以，主持人拉偏架能拉得动吗？不是，这个我觉得主持人能拉得动偏架，这说明这个主持人也是有一定水平的啊。怎么说呢？中国大陆的主持人是可以拉偏架的，中国大陆的那个新闻媒体是叫可以有主流意识的，对吧？主流意识 社会主义核心价值观，人家是专门拉偏架的。可是你在民主制度里边是没办法拉偏架的。我不认为民主制度拉偏架有效，你可能会出现拉偏架，有左边的，有右边的，是吧？但是我不认为在民主制度里拉偏架里是有效的。老百姓是一种 neutral 的，是吧？老百姓是一种无状态的，你要是按整体来看，老百姓没有什么左倾或右倾。老百姓这一个词儿是一个整体概念，没有左或右，每个人都有自己独立的看法。你如果拉偏架了，你当着全国人民的面拉偏架，你以为谁看不出来啊？你拉偏架你能挣分吗？你这不高级黑吗？是吧？千万不要拉偏架。真正要想做好一个主持人的话，你就那个一碗水端平啊。虽然说这个事很难做到，是吧？我这打电话来的时候，还有的时候有人给的时间多点，有人给时间少点，是吧？没办法，我听了好听的，我愿意多给几分钟；我听着难听的时候，赶快掐了，是吧？年轻人左派思维没什么问题，随着年龄的增长会回归理性。据说在美国这个社会里边，30岁以前都左，30岁以后都右，就是而立之年了。你发现，哎呀，这也这个该那个有激情的，该那个有理想的，也都想够了。回到现实的柴米油盐酱醋茶的时候，才发现回归理智吧。主持人光问《纽约时报》，不问拜登儿子和 CCP 勾兑，就很明显了，是吧？西斯给时间不公平就是耍流氓，哎呀，这咋办呀？我不是这个一直是那个，我这个地方也不叫民主平台嘛，我这个地方不是一直就是独裁嘛，是吧？我这就是独裁频道啊，是吧？我这独裁打酱油独裁频道，是吧？西哥，你是失眠吗？这么早直播？我这白天我失什么眠呢？我这今天呢，路上回来的时候就在听这个，这个辩论赛，我就觉得挺有意思的。我跟大家一起，就独乐不如众乐嘛，是吧？川普就这风格，他的选民也明白。我觉得是这样的，就是选民都知道这个人确实就是特别戏剧性、两面性特别突出，不喜欢他的地方真的谁都不喜欢，是吧？你觉得他有些地方做的非常雷厉风行、果断、有能力啊，比如说在这个经济复苏上面、经济促进案上面，降低税率、扶植企业回归，我觉得这个上面做的太棒了。一个国家如果不扶植自己的制造业，还扶植什么？哎，稍等一下啊，我这个电话没接进来呢。喂，你好。
哎，你好。
哎，请讲。
能听到我说话？
听到，您讲。
能听到哈。刚才可能大家都听了那个辩论哈。好多人就觉得，主持人觉得不公平是吧？啊，有人觉得主持人不公平的，觉得好多人觉得，哎呀，怎么样吧？实际上是我也感觉到有一点点，我不知道你怎么看哈。我也觉得，我可以举一个例子吧，就是他在说，在问川普，你那个税是不是去年交了750块钱？对，对吧？是吧？他一个劲儿追问他老在问他的具体数字，然后他问了好几遍，对，然后呢，当拜登的儿子，他说当川普问说拜登的儿子那个350万从俄罗斯拿350万，对，然后呢他就不继续追下去，然后他就很快就转到下一个话题。确实我觉得是有些不公平的，实际上，但是呢，同时呢有一个感觉什么呢？就是说你感觉到好像一个就是在追问川普这些问题。你要想川普他是执政，就是他正在执政，所以说呢，很多问题呢，他是作为就是防守的，因为他是现任的，对吧？对，他是防守的，所以说他一定会有好多问题对他，所以说有的时候呢，这个方面并不是说不公平，而是因为他在现任，他一定会被问好多问题，就是如果他要是比如说他如果是像 2016年的时候，他是就是非常干净的一个人就上来了，
那是个候选人，
他可以问你们问题，对吧？所以说你有的时候就是你听到这个主持人的问题的时候，还有一些这些就是这里头有一个问题，我就想说这个还有什么呢？我想不起来了，我想说什么？你可不可以咱们都可以互相讨论一下，你有什么感觉？
其实我觉得这个辩论会挺有意思的，或者这个对于我们这个华人种族或者是这个华人群体，大多数讲中文的，对这个辩论呐，或者是对选举这件事情，并不是有切身体会啊。我希望通过我们这些华人频道对这种消息的传播，让更多的华人来观看到美国是一个什么样的选举制度吧。我觉得这个我就对于我来说就学习学习，看个热闹。
实际上美国吧，每年每次选举最后都是这样，并不是说像对，都是非常激烈的。就是如果大家觉得说因为看到美国这种乱七八糟的这种好像乱象一样，就笑话着美国这民主是吧？你这什么民主啊，对吧？实际上是不对的，民主呢就是叫大家可以讲话。你看，你不要去笑话美国的民主，当然美国民主不是就是说是最圆满的民主，但是呢，就是美国这个民主呢可以至少让你讲话。在中国呢，作为中国老百姓应该看到什么时候我们也能吵一吵啊，对吧？我觉得中国人应该有这种观点，别去笑话人家。哎呀，你看这两个老头在那打架呢，中国人不能打架的机会都没有，也别去笑话台湾人扔凳子在一起，人家你可以扔凳子，你不能扔凳子，应该考虑这个。再一个呢，我还想讲一下，就是说美国今年呢这个选举呢，很多人就是都已经决定了选谁，实际上呢，就是从来没有这么肯定的人。以往呢，就是大家都我还不知道，我现在一直到好多人都到最后的时候才做决定，就最后1个月了，对吧？才决定。那么今年呢，好像人特别就知道自己选谁，就是想选谁就是选谁，很少有摇摆的人。就是我就给你举例子，我周围的人，我周围的人呢，我有一个非常好的朋友啊，她的老公我不能说名字啊，她老公呢是在我们这儿做，过去呢是在做 bio 的，就是做生物科学的。后来呢，他回到东莞，在东莞开了一个公司，做的风生水火是吧？是不是有这么个词？就做的很好生意。他家全家一直是民主党的，就支持民主党的。他就是因为我俩是邻居，是好朋友，我俩什么都好，就是不能讲这个政治。一讲政治就翻脸，就是，然后今年是第一次啊，我俩就是因为这个川普这事，我俩很少讲话了。然后呢，他就来告诉我，他说我今年要选川普了，把我吓了一跳，我差点没喘过气来。他今年选川普就是非常有意思的，他就是好多人就是这样的。然后呢，我有一个 coworker 也是一个年轻人很多人都是民主党的，这是。我们家孩子也是一样，都是选民主党的。这是好像就是很自然的事儿，年轻嘛，对吧？那么这个年轻人呢，我认识这个年轻人，他家全家都是选民主党的。他说我今年要选共和党，就是很奇怪的事，好多事儿就在我眼前的。就是有人就开始好多人就有变化，但是呢，在我们加州呢，你选好像是很难翻红的，就我们作为老百姓的话，我们选，真正起作用是在我们这个地区的法律，比如说我们这个地区呢，比如说选我们这个地区有些很多小的法律嘛，这个 shopping center 要不要建呐，对不对？这些东西呢，汽油要不要涨价呀？这些东西，我选票是非常起作用的，否则的话，我们选民主党在加州还是我认为很难，但是我非常想看一下今年会有什么结果。好了，我时间到了，谢谢。
好，谢谢，感谢您的来电。
谢谢，再见。
谢谢。我觉得你们这个不如我那个 不如我坏啊！如果我要碰见这样的朋友啊，我就告诉他，我今天我就选拜登了，咱俩辩论呗，对吧？就听听这些就思想巨大转变的，然后180度转变的这些人，你得观察人家心里到底是咋想的，这多有意思呀，是吧？一直支持民主党的，为啥就是改支持共和党了？这心路历程要去采访，对吧？黑命贵为川助选，选民主党就是为了让自己孩子什么学资格强一什么。喂，你好。
哎，喂，你好。
哎，请讲。
是小哥吗？
是的，电话接通了，请讲。
啊，你好。啊，因为那个好久没看节目了啊。
啊，
那个刚才听那个在聊大选是吧？
对。
啊，那个你什么看法呀，小哥？
我还是学习嘛，因为我们这个国家澳大利亚也没有这种总统辩论，我们这个没有这个情况。
那个，因为我好久没关注咱们这个平台了啊，就是咱们这是反共节目是吧？还是反共是吧？
我这现在就是还是差不多吧，我一直都是这个腔调的呀，没有变过呀。
你也坚定点啊！
啥叫坚定点啊？啥叫坚定点啊？说反共就得反共。
这个咱这是啊，
是吧？行，反共就是反共的。
因为那个我看你推特反共，你别这样啊！咱是奔着你来的，你这个这个平台，因为听说是反共平台，所以呢，我最近也关注了一下你。
哦，
然后呢，我看推特上
我这个，我跟你说啊，我这个平台呢，我反的是共产主义，不单反中国共产党，我还反美国共产党。
美国共产党是吧？
对，这就共产主义都得反，知道吧？
这是不是也是共产党？
什么
共产主义呢？
什么？
安提法，
我认为安提法和这个共产主义还有法西斯主义就是一样的，就是以打着反对共产主义或打着反对法西斯的名义去迫害别人，这就是不对了，这个事情要反对的。
那个还有就是我今天特别关心一个事儿啊，就是那个我看你推特上最近这好像在暴露一些什么照片呢？我看你这昆州警察都给你那个，就说咱们这儿有什么这是在搞什么呀？这是？
你说搞什么呢？
这是搞什么呀？
你说搞什么呢？
不太明白，因为你这暴露了别人的照片呢。一般情况下，
谁的照片？
你是在澳洲啊？因为你暴露了一些别人的照片呢，我就觉得这个你是在别人的允许。
我暴露了谁的照片？
你贴在了你的推特上。我看你那个推上就是好像是什么，是砸锅是吧？
我这推是砸锅的吗？
是吧？
不是，我这推是什么推？怎么给定性的？谁给定性的？
我就是看吧，我想跟你，要不这不给你打电话澄清一下嘛？因为，对啊，
这砸锅是什么？砸锅是什么个这个政治立场啊？
在澳洲，我想这个是不是随便暴露别人的照片，至少要经过别人同意吧，是吧？但是我看这个应该是没有经过别人同意的吧？
那谁的照片啊？谁同意了呀？谁的照片？你说说呀？我暴露谁的照片来着？
我也不认识啊。
你也不认识啊？
你那就那几个推嘛，最新的几个推嘛。
谁的照片啊？
不知道。那个
也不知道。
我看一下那个行吧，那这个就算了吧，因为我看你也不想回答。然后那个关于病毒真相这块儿，你有啥？你这块有啥情报啊？有啥这个资源啊？
什么真相？你说什么真相？
病毒啊！
病毒真相啊！
这是被病毒折磨的不行啊！
谁被病毒折磨的不行了？全世界是吧？
所有人呢？对啊，这都被关在家里，你这也经常也出不去啊。这昆士兰是不是现在也在那个 lockdown 啊？
昆士兰没有 lockdown 啊。
对。 然后咱们现在华人不出了一个严博士嘛？
哦，你说那个二手科学家是吗？
你好像之前谈过的是吧？
什么？
啊，这为什么人家二手科学家呢？人家这个我看人都上了那个Fox 啊，什么这些在美国是很权威的这个媒体，然后也发表了很重磅的论文。这个您是转行病毒专家了，还是这个有专家给你提供这个信息了？你就说人家是二手科学家。
什么叫科学家？你先告诉我什么叫科学家？
是为了暴露真相啊。
啥暴露真相啊？他这个真相有谁确认了吗？你怎么能判断是真相的？
对啊，人看人家发表论文了，然后自己下载了，就是不懂你。
我的妈呀，那个网站上放毛片都能放，知道吧？那网站上可以放毛片的，知道吗？
我觉得你这个不能随便就，所以我觉得咱们就是不能随便就定性人家是什么二手科学家，是吧？
不，那你都能够随便给一个眼科大夫定性为科学家，我凭啥不能给随便定性二手科学家？你能给定性一手科学家，我就能给定性二手科学家。
眼科大夫，你怎么知道人是眼科大夫呢？
不是眼科的。
据我了解，我挺关心这个事情啊，所以我就看了一下这个人家的论文报道，他说的是有道理的呀，至少对这个中共这邪恶体制一些这个揭露的，我觉得没什么问题啊。
不是，你要不要那个求真呐？我就问问你要不要求真啊？
我就求真，我才给你打电话的呀。
要求真，咱就以科学的态度求真。你就能不能把那些数据能够一五一十的让科学界来证明是真？你不这上个媒体算啥呀？
这人家都发表论文了嘛？这个
什么论文呐？你发表论文在科学界影响因子有几个呀？
彻底了也找不出什么科学的依据，是吧？
你在哪儿发表的论文呢？
这好像好久就开始。
你是在 Nature 上发表论文呢，还是在 Science 上发表论文呢？啊？我问你，那论文是在 Nature 上发布的，还是在 Science 上发布的呀？
公开源呢？
公开源是一个那个叫公开网站，谁都可以上载东西的，是吧？
所以你搜就行了。但是那个。像推特这些现在也在封锁，所以说这个世界需要真相，是不是？
推特封锁
咱也要认清真相，是吧？你
说的就是真相了。
我是说咱们要去探索，去认清真相。
哎，对，要探索，要认清，不要下结论。
你说我不是搞这个的，我也说不清楚。然后你呢，你也不是专业搞这个的是吧？
对呀，我也不专业的搞这个，我不能下结论呢。你咋就下结论了呢？
你这个你是从哪来的？你是什么时候自己钻研了一下呀？还是这个有专门的这个病毒家给你背书啊？
哎，这个事儿呢，你也不是专业的，我也不是专业的，那为啥咱俩的结论就不一样呢？我不是专业的，我认为这个事情可疑，我要存疑。咋问你不是专业的，你就能说这个事是真的呢？
你看你这我看搞得挺专业的，你说是眼科专家吗？
他是有眼科的这个从业经历啊，他是眼科大夫呀，他以前就是眼科专业毕业的呀。
你这是这个不是香港 P3 实验室的这个？
他 P3 实验室是在眼科从业之后，进入 P3 实验室，他从来没去过武汉 P4 实验室。
对，那你不能你看你不能说你本科学的，比如说眼科搞眼科，刚毕业搞眼科，最后人家现在是病毒专家吗？
什么病毒专家？就跟宰老鼠就成病毒专家了？宰老鼠就成病毒专家了？
哎呀，这个信息很多，
真是的，信息老多了啊！
信息真的很多。我就说咱们就你都没搞清情况下，就不要随便的误导大众，是吧？
没有误导，你在误导，是你在没有搞清楚事实真相的情况下下了个结论为真。
没有，
你这是不负责任的结论。
这不是求真吗？你这个信念不就是言必信，行必果吗？是吧？这个。
那你也不能道听途说就来说真呐。
这咱不讨论这个了，好吧？这个我看咱讨论不清楚。但是呢，就是说，我就说呢， 咱自己不是专家，也没搞清楚之前，咱不要误导大众，是不是？
哎，对，我同意你这个观点，
对吧？
自己不是专家，你不要误导大众，你根本就不知道这个东西是真是假，你不能下结论。
这个平台是不是可以讨论的？
啊？
咱这个平台是不是可以讨论的呢？
可以啊，可以啊。
对，你看，咱们讨论嘛，公开讨论嘛，
是在讨论的，是呀。
那你最近这个有啥行动没有啊？
啥行动啊？我等着你行动呢。
每天这个节目
断了线了，这行动就断线了。我有啥行动？我天天继续做我的节目啊，这是我行动呀。天天就是做节目就是我行动，我时不时去跟警察聊聊天就可以了。喜国不允许讨论是吧？时间到了啊！误导人是路遥社是吧？很滑稽的问话是吧？这是，怎么说呢？喂，你好，
谢总，
哎，请讲。
哎呀，还咬什么细思呀？我看了这么久的细思的节目，从那个什么，从看那个《战友之声》看起。我就一直偏爱西斯这节目，到现在我还是很偏爱，因为我看出来了，每当有什么新推文，什么所谓爆料啊，还是什么这什么证据啊，西斯对待这些材料都是很谨慎的，那不是像那些蚂蚁一样，哎呀，一听到好像有个自己的关键词，我就要高潮啊，要咋的？不是的。
因为人家都是绩点军校毕业的，绩点都比较低，一弄就高潮。
啊，就是啊，我就先说这个是那个关于什么阎立梦啊，这个其实从老郭还有那个谁路德第一次讲，我那会儿不知道什么阎立梦，现在看。当初他们那东西基本上就是从阎立梦那里得来的信息，关于病毒怎么地，关于病毒怎么地，他那个大的几方面就是仅关于病毒，不是关于政治那部分，还过得去，但是你要说你，哎呀，我有那个手机截图，我这就是爆料，我有真料，这纯粹扯犊子，你知道吗？还整的美国媒体一阵高潮，这个白宫还不敢明着说啥，然后呢，像美国人还说搞什么诉讼，然后我们有证据，到现在没出事呢，有证据，有那么害怕人看见吗？有那么害怕人听到吗？都被病毒吓那么久了，都恐慌那么久了，还怕你这个？你还怕你真相？然后今天看这个电视辩论啊，主持人我没太在意，我就想说那个什么，川普和他的川粉不是经常在各种场合说这疫情是假的阴谋，这死人数字都是假的夸大的，今天咋不说了？今天还说，哎呀，好快呀，这病毒发展好快呀，一直不承认。他的公开，像他公开采访里边就有说过这些，有人要我证据，你自己看去，你自己不看甭怪我。还有呢，我记得那个什么，美国还不是还亮出来什么，这个中国这边在那个去年的。什么时候反正就好早就给那美国驻武汉的大使馆，就发信息说这有什么病毒要他们注意啊，还是干啥的？那个信息出来过，那个新闻是什么时候新闻我忘了，反正就出来过。他们那时候就知道了，但是然后呢，采取什么行动？过了很久，然后是元月多少号？然后搞了个要禁航，要禁航，还搞了一个暂停禁航，什么推迟1个月，后来咱都以为禁航了，然后就一直现在禁着，不是，在那个禁航期间， 不知道什么时候又偷偷解禁了。偷偷这事儿是怎么爆出来的？是因为这个中国这边不是说要增加那个航班，然后美国和中国打口炮，这个由这个事儿才知道，美国老早就偷偷的谁都不告诉的就解禁了。还有那个，终于那个世卫组织发布那个大流行，就是这病毒大流行报告了。结果为了补救，当天川普就开了一个，这个就电视那个发布会，就在这说什么，全是抄的 CCP 的作业，就说那个什么，就说这病毒，这年轻人没事，老人这个多注意，这个什么夏天来了，天热了就好了，全是抄 CCP 的。那我记得清清楚楚，还给他分这个截图哈，截的什么分镜头，我都发过的。我在那个蚂蚁之声发过，那会儿好多人就骂我天天砸窗。然后呢，说是这个不戴口罩，我就不戴口罩，戴口罩多难看什么？谁说的？谁最早说的？传片了。这只要看过电视了，看过那新闻的，大家都知道谁说的。后来又搞什么？后来又搞什么围巾？搞围巾。实际上那个他和福奇到底谁怎么说这个病毒，都成了一个谜了。福奇后来在那个民主党的电视台说什么？哎呀，我劝过他不听啊，他不懂科学，也不听专家的。可能真的是有劝过。福奇在白宫的时候，就那会儿还都没开好，川普听不进去，反正川普就抄 CCP 的作业。我就说这没什么事儿啊，没那么大影响，还不用戴口罩。那个时候多少人响应啊？多少人想要不戴口罩啊？有些人是，傻胆大。这个，我记得那个啥，为什么一开始说不要戴口罩？戴口罩丑，还什么？后来又让那个什么戴围巾，后来又说是自制口罩了，是因为那会儿美国这边3M 这边产量上不来，就骗人家不要戴。
好，谢谢您的时间到了。
不好意思，
感谢您的来电，谢谢。喂，你好。
喂，
请讲。
你好。
请讲。
我是墙内的。我好不容易打通你电话。
欢迎。
我借您的节目好好骂一骂那个共产党，太坏了。
骂。
对，他今天不是还说什么辩论嘛？一个美国大选。那个共匪早就影响美国辩论了。
共产党能影响美国辩论呢？
对啊，他就渗透嘛，渗透那个美国辩论嘛。你这个最近最夯的那个事件，您关注了吗？
什么事件
？3个硬盘。
三个硬盘是谁看到了？我先问个问题
3个硬盘嘛，等会儿，
你先告诉我，为什么拿3个硬盘不弄1个硬盘？你说这三个硬盘数据拿出来，放到1个硬盘里，难不难？
3个硬盘里面有一个是拜登的儿子跟他们搞在一起收钱，还有一个第2个硬盘是那个习近平和那个王岐山在海外的资产。还有一个硬盘不知道是什么。
为啥不弄不拷贝到1个硬盘里，拿起来也不轻松点吗？
太多了吗？他们做坏事做得多，当然是要3个硬盘嘛。
3个硬盘多大呀？
这我哪知道？我也是看新闻的，知道吧？
你也不知道吧？你说现在硬盘数据
为什么要给到他们呢
？1个硬盘数据能
拜登就不用
搞
了，就肯定失败了。为什么？你知道吗？那个朱利安尼知道吧？朱利安尼
干啥的？谁徒弟？
纽约之王嘛，那个。
我以为郭德纲徒弟呢。
那个搞定那个纽约黑帮的那个。那个很厉害的那个。他说要用那个 RICO 法案嘛，对付那个所有的那些坏蛋嘛。
怎么对付？
包括
RICO 法案是干什么的？
对 RICO 法案对付那个查封他们那个海外资产吧。我觉得非常非常厉害这个。
RICO 法案
为什么你知道吗？
RICO 法案怎么写的？
这个我英文不好，反正我不知道，反正我就知道是 RICO 法案。
RICO 法案主要抓什么人？
主要抓把共产党定性为恐怖组织，他就可以抓。
抓谁？
他不是抓他，是那个冻结那个他的资产，海外的个人资产。而且我跟你说，这个非常厉害，要断他们的钱袋子。
什么时候开始断？
把他们的钱袋子全部拿掉。我跟你说，
谁的钱袋子？于建民吗？
共产党。
于建民是不是共产党？
习近平啊，什么王岐山啊，反正所有那些高官的家族啊，全部断他们财路。对吧？
王艳平是不是共产党？
海外那些
王艳平
搞七捻山的那些什么傅西秋啊，那些这个啊，通通要被抓起来。你知道为什么吗？
我问你，王艳平是不是共产党？
王艳平是谁啊？
王艳平你不知道，或者老党员了，18年的老党员了。
这个不知道。
不知道。
反正我跟你讲
啊，
这个都要抓起来。那个傅西秋啊什么的。
是吗？为啥抓傅西秋？
那些骗钱的都要抓起来，为什么？我告诉你为什么
啊！
一旦那个 RICO 法案把那个共产党高官给抓起来
啊，
他们马上投降啊，他们是不要脸的，跪在地上求饶啊！
你看见了？
他们肯定是这样子吗？然后我跟你讲，那些骗钱的那些家伙哈，马上有人，他们肯定会转为污点证人去指证那些家伙。马上把证据拿出来，那我给这些混蛋多少钱，那些人多少钱，所有那个共匪在海外的间谍通通打掉。你说厉不厉害？
厉害！我问你最后一个问题，时间也差不多了啊。
我还跟你讲一讲啊。
你投资了没？
其实我还跟你讲一讲。
我就问你投资了没有？
投资啥？
投资 GTV 啊。
投资 GTV 是什么东西啊？
你没投资呀？你们这消息都从哪儿听来的？你要不投资 GTV， 你怎么能说得出？
其实
傅西秋这名字来呢？你认识傅西秋吗？
我们这个是反共的节目你不要老是我跟你说你知道那个不是那个
鸡腿盘，
那个
差点说走嘴是吧
？GTV 啊，那个什么东西，你不要去管它我跟你说，那个庄烈红，你知道不知道？
我不认识
你不认识他？
我不认识。
我跟你说，你千万不要跟他搞在一起啊！
是吗？
这个家伙，我跟你说，吃里扒外，长得又难看。你知道前段时间，
赶快走了，你妈逼！谁给你5天保镖？我出来干他！
好了，好，非常感谢这位朋友的来电啊，有点串台，我这频道有点串台啊，GTV 是什么？我也不知道 GTV 是什么。我这是串台了。喂，你好。
喂，你好。
今天
好欢乐今天特别欢乐，我觉得。
有欢乐吗？
太欢乐了，我觉得傻逼太多了，这玩起来都玩不过来了。
哎
呦妈呀！天哪，还跟你搞辩论！天哪，他怎么不找那个严立梦去辩论去啊？这么多的问题应该直接问严立梦，还有他的论文啊什么的说什么出了论文。我想告诉他，知乎挺多的，去知乎找一下，那边稿挺多的，随便找一个出来都很多论文的。然后我还有想说一个，那个 GTV 那一帮人为什么会那么信严立梦呢？然后你该不说他以前是眼科大夫嘛，专治瞎的，然后估计是越治越瞎，对眼科嘛，所以你看打电话上来不问青红皂白就瞎嘛，是吧？所以。他们都是严立梦的那个粉丝的，所以都治瞎了，所以我非常能够理解他们。现在，哎呀妈，又瞎又脑残又那个，我觉得太欢乐了。这帮人过来是搞娱乐节目的吗？你这是政治娱乐台吗？
我这反共的，我这反共频道啊！你们刚才没听见人家说我是反共频道吗？
他觉得你这都不是反共了，太娱乐了，我觉得玩他们就够了。他一天到晚说这个长相丑，那个丑，这不跟那个娱乐频道一样吗？就说你看这明星身材这样不行，你看上面要胸大一点，屁股大一点，这跟那 没分别，我们这是娱乐平台。哎呀，继续，天哪，我的妈呀！就这一般智商，玩，继续玩。
好，谢谢，
加油，拜拜，
拜拜。你瞧瞧，我到底是反共频道还是娱乐频道啊？我到底是个什么频道？我怎么现在有点被你们给搅晕了呢？啊，越治越瞎是吧？不投资 GTV 那都是伪类特务是吧？没投资的在那瞎逼逼什么呀？又是硬盘，又是潘多拉盒子，又啪科学家是吧？瞧，喂，你好，喂，
西斯啊，
童主任你好，
西斯好，兄弟姐妹们好，我发现今天有点意思啊，我感觉这个棍逼改变策略了啊，派点人过来，用温柔的那种，不能跟你抬杠了。我越听这把戏都，刚才那哥们我感觉也不像南方的，他是用这诚心，用这种口气的这种乡音说话，还要改变方针了，他们啊，就套你话来了，我感觉。看你到底是不是反共的？我这非著名的科学家我都听出来了。刚才第一个那哥们说这个阎立梦，你又抬举他了，他哪是2手的，他8手的科学家，你8手都不能算科学家，他不就眼科医生？对吧？他就弄小耗子眼睛看看有没有白内障嘛的，他也就干这个的。那个刚才那哥们我觉得太乐，今天这个昨天没露面，今天江大比队露面了。你看了吗？
没看着，去黄河边家了吗？
去黄河边了，下午全程英文，
还英文呢，
全程英文，在那独立演讲，后面蚂蚁都在后面站着。自己在那儿，警车就在边上停着，他就在那儿左胳膊抬完，右胳膊抬，左胳膊抬完，右胳膊抬，就这样一直，就跟领导干部一样。
厉害，
都是英文，咱听不懂。我觉得你有必要回来看看，加快你给翻译，明天或者哪天做节目，看看这BK到底是说嘛呀，对吧？我估计昨天没露头，他也是编稿去了，知道吧？编这词儿今天怎么说，知道吧？
我
还有一个
特期待有个讲英文的来我这儿叨逼叨。
他肯定不去，你那儿太远了。你看他回来，你晚上回去，你给节俭一下，你听听他到底说的嘛，对吧？
好。
还一个那个余则成啊，报道这个王啪啪前几天来我们 LA 了。
余则成去 LA 了？
不是，余则成报的，王啪啪来了。来 LA 了，秘密来了，有事儿啊，具体事儿咱就不说了，反正他过来关键的事儿来，是吧？行，回来你研究那个江大比嘴说的嘛就行了。
好
啊，
谢谢，
拜拜，
再见。什么？不得不说，这个频道小姐姐们三观正，思维敏捷，是吧？咱这频道咱这频道就是正常水平、正常思维、正常人类。不敢去西斯那儿，10万美金不好交代，是吧？香大壳、胸大肌，亮了半天，还像亮胸大肌去了，哎呦！没声音了，有。没声音了，你重启就行了。3个正常啊，支持童主任。在黄河边频道啊，我没看着啊。贵宾英语说，班农交流户就是顶多20%能懂。王啪啪来处理持枪挺锅了吧？看不出来他出钱没出钱，不可能，绝对不可能出钱的，因为出钱就会被抓住把柄，知道吧？一推625，尤其是遇到刑事案件，一推625，他能跑多远跑多远，能跑多快跑多快。领导们都下基层了啊，童主任提高警惕，哎呀。 哦，好像是6个小时之前啊，就这个温哥华行动。喂，你好。
你好，谢谢小哥。
哎，请讲。
好像是之前啊。
请讲。
好久没给你打电话了。
欢迎欢迎。
声音还可以吧？
可以的，跟你讲。
好的。很多话要讲。
好。
首先呢，咱们说一说那个严博士吧。
好。
他的那个叫什么发表的论文吧？
啊。
他只是一个推测。是不是啊？他没有证据。包括有一个法国的那个生物学家，他在5月也发过这个类似的推测的东西。他说什么呢？他说的这个病毒啊，这个病毒应该是它也有它的种性的，对不对？
哦。
它你就说一个猪，你不可能长一个羊尾巴，对不对？
哦。
你个蝙蝠的病毒里面不可能突然会有一个那个叫什么呀？那个艾滋病的病毒在里面。这不就是猪长了一个羊尾巴的这个东西吗？你如果没有人工的这个加入这个病毒，怎么会有一个艾滋病的病毒的片段在这个病毒里面呢？所以呢，它这只是一个推论。但是你要拿到这个证据是很难的。对不对？你说是谁做的这个病毒呀？那个做的人你哪找去？是不是这个问题？所以说呢，他所有的这些东西都只是推论。所以现在美国政府或者其他的欧洲政府并没有追究这个病毒是不是人造的。因为这个证据太难取了。对不对？如果没有亲自做这个病毒的人出来说，那你这个证据就是找不到的。这就跟有些案子，这就跟有些刑事案呢，杀了个人，这没有他妈几十年了，他没找到这个凶手。也有可能。对不对？所以说美国现在根本就没有说这个病毒是不是人造的，根本不追究这个问题。他就追究的是一个什么呢？你的防御是不是做好了？你是不是事先预警了？对不对？
对。
他从这方面去追是对的。因为你这个病毒找这个病毒是否人造的这个太难取证了。
对。
你就是美国的科学家，你就是进到了10P实验室又怎么样的？你也不见得拿得到这个证据。
对。
是不是？
对。
好的，这个说完了。我再说一下其他的东西吧。首先我要感谢几个频道，再要推荐几个频道。一个呢，我刚才看了你的那个转播的那个翻译。首先呢，我你的翻译不感冒啊。你翻译的没有英体的好。
好。
再一个呢，美国之音的我也听了。美国之音不错。还有一个天亮10分的那个翻译不太好。如果要我排个名呢，美国之音的可能排在前面，英体的第二，英体的稍微慢一点，因为它要暂停一下。
对。
所以呢，我觉得美国之音的排第一，英体的排第二，英体的不错。因为我没有他的联系电话，也没有在这里表示感谢吧。
好。
一直关注英体的节目。再一个呢，感谢朱安丽女士吧。朱安丽女士的节目我也常听，也没办法跟她联系，也在这里表示感谢。还有图森破节目，我要跟她提点意见，也希望你转达，也希望他们能听到。因为图森破的节目
都有频道，你可以在他频道下留言去啊。人家都有频道，你想表达什么意思都去下边留言去啊。
喂，
我说人家都有频道，你可以去他们频道下面留言呀。
我不能跟他留言，我翻墙，我原来有个推特，现在他妈翻不出去。
哦，
对吧？ 所以我只能在你打个电话。为什么我好长时间没打电话？
原来是这个情况。
所以说我也我不好跟他留言，知道吧？
好。
我在这里表示感谢。再一个，我跟涂森破的节目提点意见他有几个辩论节目我都听了，但是呢，我觉得辩题呀，太多，他列了一张纸7、8个辩题，我觉得如果一个比较好的辩论节目有3到4个辩题就可以了，给嘉宾足够时间。再一个，我觉得我非常赞同，那个画家陈涛先生的那个观点，说中国的民主能否一下子实现，我觉得是不可能的。因为民主是需要培养的，民主是需要训练的，民主是需要普及的，有些观点、有些理念是需要大家有一个辩论共识的过程，要大家有一个认识的过程，并不是说明天我可能就妈的说民主就民主了，那不是说像他妈郭骗子他们那说的。我在我的朋友圈里面，也有转那个郭骗的那个东西的，包括录得节目的一些东西的，包括3个硬盘我都知道，都有人转。我都觉得妈的，现在我都觉得他们太可怜了，知道吧？我是怎么想法呢？可能，怎么说呢？因为中国这个事儿啊，不太好办。很多人其实向往着民主，但是并不知道这个民主的真正的理念是什么。对不对？我大概就是说一下这个。
好，谢谢。
我在还要推荐一个频道，还要推荐一个频道叫天空探照灯。还有一个频道叫天空想知道，这是他一个人做的，他的非常的短，讲了一些内幕吧。反正这个节目我也比较好，我也想推荐一下，好不好？
好，
谢谢你小哥，谢谢你，
感谢您的来电，
一直关注你们的节目，一直关注你们节目，希望你转达我的对他们这些人的谢意，好不好？
好，谢谢，谢谢，
再见。
好，刚才这几位频道啊，你们想领谢意的来我这频道来听啊，我已经转达完了啊，谢谢啊。喂，你好。
打倒公贵。
这是什么？你这是什么频道？
我走错频道了没？走错频道了没？
没。
打倒公贵。我那天听那个滕主任说他儿子不是说一打开什么听打倒公贵，我觉得特有意思，这小孩挺好玩。认识一个叫吴楠的人吗？西斯
认识。
哎呀，今天那我
吴楠吴玲，这是那个这是这个叔侄俩对吧？侄儿媳妇儿。
那我就别讲了，你都知道了。就是我原来一直老说是 Sarah 是他的那个什么哥哥的儿媳妇儿，原来现在是那个王啪啪呀。
侄儿媳妇儿，那是那个是
侄儿媳妇儿，是没有我是看的亲自看，我也不知道啊。我看的那个郭文贵他老婆叫什么月什么什么之，发的推文嘛，说那个为什么把他女儿的那个郭美的那个Twitter 给封了，然后他底下就把那个附加上那个郭美的那个 Twitter， 然后郭美呢就在那里头讲了说这个王啪啪呢按这个伦理道德上来讲呢，他应该是他的嫂子，但不是他哥哥的老婆，是他叔叔的儿媳妇儿。
对，没错，
是他爸的这个情人，
是他爸的侄儿媳妇儿，
是他爸的侄儿媳妇儿。
对，他爸的侄儿媳妇儿就是他哥嘛，他表他叔伯哥哥嘛，他叔伯哥哥的女朋友嘛，是吧？
对。然后呢，但是实际上呢是他爸的情人。
这关系太复杂，就俩字儿就解释清楚了，不用那么复杂，就叫趴灰。
趴灰这词儿，咱岁数太大了，咱不懂啊。
老词儿，《红楼梦》里的。
老词儿得是那圈里的人才能知道，不是这圈里的人也不知道啊。
好吧，好吧。
好吧，我就觉得你今天那个几点钟开始？因为我看完那个辩论会过来，一看你这都已经开始了。今天有单口相声吗？
我没单口相声，今天前面一边我就跟着大家一起看辩论会了。我这个跟着大家一起看，听听辩论会，看看辩论会，蹩脚的翻译了几句。
好，能翻译就是好样的，蹩脚不蹩脚，谁都听得懂。
好，
好吧，那我今天就说这么多，打打光棍，拜拜。
谢谢，再见。瞧瞧我这以后这该不会整成个铃声吧？我们文化人不懂趴灰是吧？你们都是文化人啊。三狗八开的八啊，一定要八开。八灰啊，不是趴灰啊。好，我今天2个小时了，今天都2个小时了啊。八灰第一次听，回去百度去啊，百度去。今天的节目就到这儿吧，非常感谢大家的收看收听，我们明天万一热线再见。怎么也飞不出过片的世界，原来我是一只酒醉的蚂蚁。你的那一句誓约来得轻描又淡写，却要抢走我这一生再也还不完的钱。曾经有一口锅，它感动了我，它给我带来了很多很多。这口锅是这样说的：真正战友永不放弃，你的钱我拿去。
好兄弟，好兄弟，西斯哥，你知道我喜欢你。
说你爱我，说我的优点很多，我却没感到你是否真的说我。你身边蚂蚁很多，我真的难以琢磨。我爱你爱的真的没有一点把握。花开花又落，转眼追你3年多，我却没看到你是否真心反攻。反王反攻不反击，若即若离爱没过，寂寞的时候只能按住王啪啪一个。